I'm having a bad day is what I would be saying if Despicable Me 4 wasn't finally here. Now that we've got even more baddies and goodies to discuss, today we're ranking all the characters from Despicable Me 1 through 4, from good to evil. So first up, spoilers ahead, but it doesn't take an evil genius to figure that out. So let's get started as usual with the most noble and pure-hearted characters. These are the good. And the gold medal of good, surprising absolutely nobody, goes to the series' most adorable character, Agnes. The youngest of Gru's girls, a lover of all things fluffy, sweet, unicorn-related, or even unicorn-adjacent.
You don't love me!
Agnes is the closest any character in the series comes to being pure of heart. Her placement is already pretty much justified by the fact that she's an innocent child, but then there's her generosity to consider. She's always there for her family, and we see her acting as an eager helper to Gru whenever she can be.
Are you really gonna save the world?
In the second movie, she helps console him after he finds out Lucy is leaving for Australia.
Was there anything you could do?
And in the third, she sells her belongings when Gru loses his job, including that ever so fluffy unicorn plush she got in the first movie. Agnes is truly too pure for this world and needs to be protected at all costs. That said, she really should start training Lucky indoors. Lucky doesn't really have all that much screen time, and that's fair enough. What with all the supervillains, family drama, and sentient Twinkies, there isn't always room for this little unicorn goat dude to shine.
Found a unicorn!
But Lucky is a loyal companion to Agnes, to the point where even their brief separation in the fourth movie isn't enough to take away their special bond. He may not be stopping supervillains, but Lucky is a good boy, and sometimes that's all you need to be. Taking our bronze medal of good is the man who gave his own medal away, the biker from Minions: Rise of Gru. He isn't exactly the most quintessential character, but we had to give this absolute legend a mention. A true good Samaritan. He stopped to check on Otto during a bike ride through the desert, and had no qualms with giving him the medallion he was looking for. On top of being generous and sincerely concerned for the little guy's well-being, he offers him a ride and the two basically become besties in less than 24 hours.
Frisco, disco! It's your lucky day, kid. I'm headed up the coast. I could drop you off on the way.
He's one of those people who's kind not because it benefits him, but because he just really genuinely wants to be. Landing just outside of our top 3 is the oldest of Gru's girls, Margot. At 12 years old, she's taken on the role as the group's older sister her whole life, and thankfully, she's quite good at it. We see her best moments in how she interacts with Agnes, often protecting her from Edith's scary stories or comforting her when she's sad or scared.
Okay, don't worry. Everything's going to be fine. We're gonna be really happy here.
As for her dynamics outside of the family, Margot is generally polite, but she's not a pushover. When she knocks on your door to sell cookies, you can tell her you're an automated message all you want, but you can't make her believe it. The worst you can expect from Margot is an occasional act of rebellion, which usually just means talking or dancing with a boy behind Gru's back. Next, we have the leading lady of the Gru family, Lucy Wilde Gru. Like Gru, she's intensely protective of her family, although she isn't perfect.
Go take a bite of his cheese, young lady, right now.
Like when she forced Margot to take a piece of cheese from Nico's plate, which unintentionally got her engaged to him.
Hello, my schmoopsie poo. Whoa, hey.
She'll always stick up for her girls and take care of their messes. She's a mama bear in the purest form. Later in the third movie, she even saves the girls from falling to their doom, with quick thinking, acrobatics, and a whole lot of bubblegum. Unlike Gru, however, we have to give her some bonus points for her lack of a villain arc. She's been working at the AVL for presumably years and takes great joy in her job of saving people and taking down bad guys. In the fourth movie, though, she does have one unsavory moment when her new identity turns her into a hairstylist. She ends up making a client go bald and setting the whole place on fire in one day.
What? Should be smoking.
While we understand her nerves, the fact that she didn't bother to check on said client to see if she was okay is a bit messed up. It might be surprising to see us get to the Minions so early, but some of them have earned a more honorable spot than others, like Otto. He admittedly isn't the smartest guy around, but Otto makes up for it with sheer heart and determination. He made the grave mistake of giving the medallion to Brad to trade for a pet rock, which put Gru and the other Minions in serious danger. For all his mistakes though, he does everything in his power and then some to retrieve the medallion and fix the mess he made. His clumsiness earns him the Darwin Medal for sure, but his heart earns him a spot in the good section to even it out. And of course, we can't ignore the spin-off movie's main minions, Kevin, Stuart, and Bob. One a leader, one a musician, one adorable. But all of them are heroes to their people. While the minions in general have to lose some points for their lifelong ambition to serve whatever despicable villains they can find, these three gain those points right back for their intentions. When the minions become depressed over not having a master, Kevin leads the trio to search for a villain fit to lead them and give their lives purpose again. While they wreak havoc, as all minions do, they end up saving their tribe through their efforts. Kevin was willing to blow himself up to save his minion brethren from Scarlet. Bob gives Scarlet the very crown the Queen rewarded him with as a consolation prize, which was seriously sweet given how much she'd done to the minions. And as for Stuart, he was there. No matter what, he was always there for his minion buddies, and isn't that what matters most at the end of the day? But as great as those minions are, it's time for the real star of the show, Gru. While he had one of the most iconic redemption arcs of the 21st century, Felonious Gru had a rough start, morally speaking. From popping kids' balloons to eating ice cream in front of people trying to lose weight, there were few lows this mastermind wouldn't sink to, and although his crimes were usually a thinly veiled attempt to get his mother's approval, they could still be pretty bad.
When you hear about it, you're going to be very proud. Good luck with that.
Arguably, his worst was adopting 3 little orphan girls to use them as part of his plan to steal the moon. Thankfully though, Gru showed that beneath that evil facade was a good heart. Once his girls stole his heart, he was willing to drop everything to save them from Vector, even returning the moon to its rightful place after he'd stolen it. From then on out, Gru is an absolute legend as both a dad and a hero.
How come you're so fat?
Because my house is made of candy.
He puts dangerous criminals like Balthazar Brad and El Macho away with the AVL, and will go to any lengths to protect his family from harm. He can be overprotective, sure, especially in regards to Margot and her attempts to talk to boys, but he's still always a source of encouragement and comfort. Whether it's freezing 2-timing dates and trying their delightful food.
Good soup. I love the combination of gummy bears and meat.
Or saving their lives on multiple occasions. Gru always put the happiness of his girls, and now his boy, first and foremost. And the 4th movie gives him even more brownie points for how patient he is with Gru Jr. Seriously, that baby was absolutely out to get him for the first half of the film, and Gru is still nothing but an absolute angel to him. And that's how you know he's a great dad. We've got one more group of minions to talk about before we leave the good category, the Mega Minions. Man, they will never run out of ways to keep cranking out minion merch, will they? As if the minions weren't unpredictable and dangerous enough, this movie decided to have them act as the objects of the AVL's experimentation to give them superhuman powers.
It's time to get you out for some real-world training. And if you do well out there, you'll be the AVL's new secret weapon.
This includes hardening, flying, stretching, super strength, and laser beams strong enough to cut through to the other side of the Earth in seconds and hit a satellite in space without even starting to fade. Like, seriously, this guy is actually a legitimate threat. He could destroy the planet by accident.
I'm quite sure I won't regret this.
But these 5 were more than happy to use their powers to save people, or at least try to save them. They also gave Maxime Lamal the absolute beating of his lifetime at the end of the movie, which was one of the most cathartic scenes in the whole franchise. But let's talk about Gru's first biological child, Gru Jr. Honestly, we were pretty unsure where this little guy would end up. At the start of the movie, he's shown to absolutely dislike Gru, and it's never really explained why, since Gru is as loving and caring as can be with him. He startles him by popping balloons, which causes him to ruin his relaxation time and also nearly causes a car crash. That said, all of that is null in a moral sense when you consider that he's a baby. He's not doing this stuff maliciously, as we see later on when he and Gru pull off a heist together and actually bond.
Okay.
He ends up saving Gru's life from Maxime in the final battle, literally only able to overcome the latter's influence by sheer love for his dad. Every endearing anti-hero needs his endearing anti-hero son. And fittingly, at the bottom end of the good section, we have Silas Ramsbottom. As the leader of the Anti-Villain League, he does a lot of good work. At times, he can seem cold and distant, but he's surprisingly loyal to his employees. He's a decent boss who genuinely cares about his employees, and does what he can to get them out of danger, including relocating Gru's family to the town of Mayflower when Maxime threatens to kill them after escaping prison. When he finds out that Gru has been compromised, he immediately sends the Mega Minions out to rescue him, showcasing his loyalty once again.
Assemble the Mega Minions!
But ironically, the Mega Minions are also the main reason he isn't any higher. He performed the experiment that turned these 5 into the Mega Minions, without knowing if they would even survive. Guess it's better than performing those experiments on humans, sure, but it's still sort of messed up. Not really much better than animal experimentation at that point. But with how many criminals there were even in the good section, you can imagine how many more there are in the gray area. The last of Gru's kids, Edith, is actually first up in this category. And she's an interesting case. She's by far the least moral of the girls, and with more interest in violence and other dark subject matter than anything else.
We're gonna have to make a little trouble later.
What? I already have.
She's a mischief maker through and through, whether it's commissioning the minions to prank unsuspecting butlers or scaring Agnes with her prayers, thanking the good Lord for the blessing of, bedbugs. There's definitely a case to place her lower, but we have to give her some credit for a few things. For one, while she is a troublemaker, she isn't a criminal or anything. I don't think she is, at least.
Let's see. Hey, oh!
Somebody broke that.
Nor does she seem to want to hurt anyone. And while she's not as caring as Margot, Edith is actually a surprisingly decent big sister. She teases Agnes a lot, sure, but she's also more than willing to stick by her for hours to wait for a unicorn to show up. And in the 4th movie, she beats up a karate instructor for making Agnes upset. Edith has a heart and plenty of time to grow up into someone who shows more of it. Moving on to another morally gray kid, Poppy Prescott, one of the many characters introduced in the 4th movie. Poppy is Chet Cunningham's new neighbor. She recognizes Gru as, well, Gru, an alumni from his old school with a French name that translates to no good high school. She blackmails Gru with his identity as a former supervillain to perform a heist that she thinks will look good on her record, which is a pretty rough start for her placement here.
You're of respecting your elders?
I don't respect boomers. I just mock them.
But thankfully, she shows off more of her good side than anything else.
Perfect!
She's good with kids and animals, shown by her care for her cat and her interactions with Gru Jr. But her best deed by far was warning Gru when she discovered Principal Ubelschlecht was paying his family an unwilling visit, even going as far as to help him catch up to Maxime and save Gru Jr. So enjoy that evil high school career while you can, Poppy. We all know you're gonna have a pretty sweet redemption arc one day. From one wannabe supervillain to another, Drew Gru is the proof that while the apple doesn't always fall far from the tree, that doesn't mean it never does. Drew was envied greatly by his long-lost twin for all the great stuff he had. He's rich, he's got a mansion, their mother preferred him, and most importantly, he's got a sick head of hair. But Drew isn't perfect. While he performed some reckless crimes like petty candy theft, he was never able to live up to their legendary supervillain father's expectations, which led him to overcompensate by trying to join Gru on his own missions.
Hey, you want to take her out for a spin just for some fun?
For his choice of a criminal lifestyle and general tendency to wreak havoc, Drew does lose some points. But at the end of the day, he proved he was a decent guy by dropping his anger towards Gru to help him rescue the girls from Balthazar Brad.
We're after the diamond, not the bubblegum. Oh, got it!
Drew might be a criminal, albeit a pretty mediocre one, but he's also good with kids and never seems to want to genuinely hurt anyone. While we've already mentioned their kid, a quick mention of Perry and Patsy Prescott is in order. As the Gru family's temporary neighbors, they come off as a little bit snooty and standoffish. They don't necessarily do anything wrong, but we have to bring up the fact that Patsy tells a story off screen that ends up with her and her husband quote, no longer being allowed on the island of Oahu. But now it's time to get into the more villain-adjacent characters like Wild Knuckles, former leader of the Vicious Six. Look, I know it feels wrong to place him this low, but the fact is that Wild Knuckles spent his entire life committing notorious crimes as the leader of the Vicious Six. After they betrayed him, he vowed revenge and was willing to kidnap and torture Gru, a child, mind you, to get it.
Welcome to my newest torture device, the Disco Inferno.
The only thing saving him from a lower spot was, of course, that he did redeem himself in the end. He ended up defeating the remaining Vicious Six members, not to get revenge, but to actually protect Gru, and was even willing to die in the process. He became sort of a criminal father figure to Gru, and while he was still committing crimes, at least he was showing love and care to a kid who never really had much of it to begin with.
We make a good team. We do?
But let's talk about one of Gru's elderly allies, Dr. Nefario. What's an evil supervillain without his faithful inventor? Nefario is one of those characters whose morals really depend on what perspective you look at him from. On one hand, he's a great asset to Gru's career. In Rise of Gru, he's the one who helps connect Gru and the Vicious Six.
If you ever get famous, remember who gave you your first gadget.
And in the first movie, he faithfully supports his endeavors by building gadgets and keeping any and all distractions from villainy away. But on the other hand, this does mean that Nefario had no problem going behind Gru's back and sabotaging the family he was trying to build. What keeps him in the gray area, despite his insistence on being an evil, or at least not good, scientist, is his loyalty to Gru. While he wavers a lot, like leaving him in the second movie temporarily to work for El Macho, he ends up proving his loyalty by rejoining Gru in the end. In the fourth movie, he even restores Gru Jr. to normal after he's mutated by Maxime's cockroachification ray. Nefario isn't a good guy by any means, but he is a good friend, and he's willing to place his loved ones above villainy every time. From one loyal companion to another, Gru's dog-like thing, Kyle, is next. There isn't really much to say about him. He's a pretty ill-behaved dog, given how he initially tried to attack Agnes when she first arrived, and generally acts hostile towards most people he encounters. That said, he does show some level of loyalty to Gru and his family, and it seems like he's warmed up to Agnes later on, even going as far as to play a dragon at her fairy princess-themed birthday party. On the topic of loyalty, it's finally time to talk about the Minions. While the spin-off trio, Otto and the Mega Minions, got some points for their general goodwill towards minion kind and beyond, we have to talk about the absolute menaces the Minions are. We could talk about their whole purpose being to serve the most evil master they can find, from dinosaurs to cavemen, but that's just how they're made. You can't fault them for an act of God, right?
It's an act of God. Ain't no account for no act of God.
We could wonder all day what criminal activities they've gotten up to over the decades, but all we know is that they like serving supervillains, and they like bananas. So we're gonna give them the Gluttony Medal. But despite their loyalty and genuine love for their masters, the reason they're this low is because of how they treat each other. The Minions, they just absolutely throttle each other. It can be as innocent as a prank, or as severe as them actually dogpiling one of their own and beating the living crap out of them. Take the fourth movie, for instance. One Minion gets stuck in a vending machine, and the Minions not only refuse to help him, but at the end of the movie, it's revealed that they never even went back for him. They literally left this guy to rot in a vending machine for eternity because it was funny. And finally, rounding out the gray area, we have Herb Overkill, one half of the main villain duo of the first Minions movie. Herb is his wife's opposite in many ways. He's nowhere near as ruthless as Scarlet, first of all, mainly acting as her inventor and second in command. He's more than willing to torture anyone who crosses her, which simultaneously showcases some devotion to his wife and some disdain for literally everyone else. They actually have a loving relationship, which earns him one of our more respectable Lust Sinner medals. In addition to his love for Scarlet, it's worth mentioning that Herb himself isn't really that bad. When torturing the Minions proves futile, he decides instead to befriend and play with them.
Prepare for torture, which I do.
Showing that he's more than capable of being friendly when he's left to his own devices. But now we're getting into those with truly despicable traits. This is the bad to evil category, or if you prefer, the despicable them. He's nowhere near a supervillain, but we have to mention Antonio. El Macho's son is a twig with black hair and a decent fashion sense. In other words, he's the most dashing man Margot has seen in her entire life, which is why after inviting her to his party as a date, It really hurt to see him two-timer by dancing with another girl. Gru's mother, Marlena Gru, is up next. When you're such a hateful mother that you're the entire reason your son is a supervillain in the first place, there's really no other category we could even think about placing you in. Throughout Gru's life, he's worked to impress his mother with his ambitions and dreams, to which every time she's answered him with cold, callous insults. When Gru tells her he wants to go to the moon, she tells him
NASA isn't sending the monkeys anymore.
she also openly favored her other son, Drew, who she didn't even tell Gru existed until he was a middle-aged man with a family and a mortgage. And the final character who isn't in full-on supervillain territory, Miss Hattie, is up next. She's the owner of the orphanage in the first movie, and despite working as a caretaker for kids who have nobody else to turn to, still manages to be one of the scummiest characters in the entire franchise. She uses the girls as child laborers to sell her cookies, giving them daily quotas and shouting at them when they fail to reach them, even placing them in boxes of shame when they disappoint her. This may be a hot take, but we're giving her the Greed Sinner medal. Using child labor to sell your cookies is a whole new level of greed. Her cruelty extends beyond that, though. She's also verbally abusive to her girls, even telling Edith directly,
You're never gonna get adopted, Edith. You know that, don't you?
She's proven wrong when Dr. Gru pays a visit, who she suddenly feels no need running a background check on once he compliments her. She almost seems worse than the supervillains in certain ways. I mean, at least they're honest about how evil they are, unlike her. Every villain needs resources to do their dirty work, and that's where Mr. Perkins comes in. As the Bank of Evil's president, he loans out funds to support villains in their various schemes, which means that he's also an accomplice to every villain he's ever worked with. You could argue that the man's just trying to run a business, but it is an evil one. I mean, it says so right in the name. He's also the father of Vector, and while he isn't an outstanding dad by any means, he at least supports Vector in his villainous endeavors.
Don't worry. The moon is as good as ours.
And as of the ending scene of Despicable Me 4, they're both in prison for presumably life, so they have plenty of time to bond. But now it's time to move into the main villains of the franchise, starting with the least evil of the group, El Macho. A notorious supervillain with manliness to spare. It's said that he died riding a shark strapped with dynamite into an active volcano, but it turns out he just faked it for views. While they were busy viewing this, he worked on making PX-41, a serum that turned ordinary creatures like minions into mindless zombies of destruction.
It's time for me to make a spectacular return to evil.
He planned to use this to take over the world, even inviting Gru to join him. What a nice, generous guy. Oh, actually, he's trying to take over the world. The closest thing he has to any redeeming qualities is the fact that he at least seems to be a decent father to his son Antonio. Next up is one of the newest villains, Valentina. Acting as one of the secondary antagonists of Despicable Me 4, she doesn't seem to be nearly as malicious as her boyfriend. That doesn't take away from her acting as an accomplice everywhere he goes, though. Whether he's planning mass murder, kidnapping, or legitimate crimes against humanity, Valentina is right there in the passenger seat. I guess if nothing else, she's a decent girlfriend who tries to be supportive of her man, but that only saves her from falling so low. Rolling right into our next spot is Principal Jubel Schlecht. Starting with the obvious, she's the head honcho of a notorious supervillain school. She's trained countless villains in varying degrees of evil, most notably her favorite student, Maxime Lamel. After Gru and his team steal the school mascot, she wastes no time in telling him exactly where Gru's family is located, knowingly placing him and his family in grave danger. She also took no issue with terrorizing the girls and even attempting to kill their mom in front of them. This lady is seriously messed up, but we can't deny that she's doing her job well. Her students really outdo her in terms of villainy. We've now entered the bottom 5, and it begins with the villain who started it all, Vector. The man who commits crimes with both direction and magnitude, Vector has the confidence of a god and, to an extent, the criminal capabilities to back it up. Vector is absolutely ruthless, with a security system with an arsenal fit to rival the US military, and enough evil in his heart to use it without any hesitation. And speaking of no hesitation, Vector doesn't mind using his kids in his schemes. When Gru steals the moon, Vector kidnaps the girls and holds them hostage until Gru gives him the moon, showing that he was fully willing to murder 3 children to achieve his goals. He didn't learn his lesson either. In the short film Mooned, Vector is offered a ride from a friendly minion, but he refuses it, which results in him getting stranded even further into space on Mars.
This is totally what what I planned! Ha!
He did somehow make it back home, given that he's now in prison in the ending scene of Despicable Me 4, and he seems to be enjoying himself. I guess if we had to say anything overtly good about him, it's probably that he at least tries to make the color orange look good, which is truly a heroic achievement. But from one side of the color wheel to the other, we have a character who's been a bad boy. Balthazar Bratt lands just outside of our podium of evil. And honestly, we do kind of feel for him. Child stardom isn't easy, especially when Hollywood decides to cancel your show the second you start being a little less cute. Desperate to hold on to his fame, Bratt went crazy and decided to become the mini supervillain character he played on TV.
I've been a bad boy!
First things first, the Pride Center medal has to go to this guy easily. From merchandise of himself to robots shaped like himself, Bratt is obsessed with being seen and loved by everyone around him. But more than that, he wants revenge on Hollywood for casting him aside. So he plans to reenact one of his iconic TV episodes by sending the whole city up into space. As if this weren't bad enough already, he becomes even more sinister by kidnapping Gru's girls to distract him from stopping his plan. Bratt lives up to his name. His childhood trauma might earn him some sympathy points, but it doesn't make up for how surprisingly threatening he was. Now, we hate to give these guys a medal of any kind, but the Bronze Medal of Evil goes to the Vicious Six, obviously excluding Wild Knuckles. Bellbottom, Svengeance, Jean-Claude, Nunchuck, and Stronghold. These 5 are among the most notorious supervillains the world has ever seen, with a reputation that really makes you wonder who's making merchandise of all these wanted criminals. But that question can wait. For now, all you need to know is that they're not just villains, they're traitorous villains. Despite Wild Knuckles going in solo to steal the medallion and leading the group for years, they're all perfectly fine with betraying him and leaving him to die so they can bring in a fresh face to the team. When Gru shows up, they thank him for his dedication by kidnapping him and holding him hostage, showing that, like the previous 2, they have no problem involving literal children in their schemes. They also tried to straight up crucify Gru on a giant clock tower, which is just a whole new level of screwed up. You guys should sit down for this one because Scarlet Overkill has officially been demoted from her status as Despicable Me's most evil villain. Don't go thinking we've softened up on her though. Sure, she grew up impoverished, but that doesn't excuse her lifelong ambition to steal the Queen's crown and become the ruler of England, and eventually the whole world.
You have no idea who you are messing with. I am the greatest supervillain of all time!
She's undoubtedly committed some unspeakable crimes to get there, given how she's lauded as the most dangerous supervillain in the world, and openly threatens to kill the minions if they fail her. Thankfully, the minions don't fail her, instead getting the crown by a freak accident, giving it to her once confronted. She thanks them, naturally, by sentencing them to be tortured in a dungeon by Herb for their perceived betrayal for eternity. To hold a grudge against a malicious traitor is one thing, but to hold a grudge against someone you just thought was betraying you, that's a mindset worthy of the Wrath Center Medal. That said, she does love her husband at least. Heck, even in prison, they're still dancing together and having a great time. And she did seem sincerely grateful when Bob gave her his miniature crown. Scarlet is just about pure evil, but we can't help but feel bad. Her head is clearly not in the right place, and hasn't been for years. It doesn't justify anything she does, but it's proof that she isn't outright soulless, at least. The Gold Medal of Evil has to go to none other than the newest Despicable Me villain, Maxime Lamel. And this guy, oh boy, this guy honestly surprised us. More so than any villain before him, Maxime absolutely hates Gru. This is not just due to Gru placing him under arrest with the AVL, but due to Gru stealing a song for the talent show in 9th grade. It's been literal decades, and Maxime still holds an intense grudge over this, to the point where he manages to break out of jail after threatening to kill Gru and his whole family. Gru is relocated as a result, leaving Maxime and Valentina to hunt him down to enact his evil plan, kidnapping Gru Jr. and taking him as his own son. Yes, really. Many of the villains in this section have involved kids in their schemes, but 1, none of them were as young as Gru Jr., and 2, none of them planned to do this from the beginning. Maxime's entire plan is to kidnap an infant child, and once he does, he hits him with the cockroachification ray, turning Gru Jr. into a mutant cockroach human hybrid to help kill his own father. That's some Joker level pettiness and malice right there. But while that would at least make it reasonable to place him at the top of our list, We have one more scene that justifies his placement even more. In one scene, he has to stop by a gas station, and while there, growing frustrated by the card reader not working, he hits an innocent gas station attendant with the cockroach ray. Now you'd think, okay, he's just turning this dude into a cockroach hybrid to work as a servant. But you'd be wrong. He just shoots the guy, laughs about it, and then leaves. There was no benefit to his plan here at all. No pettiness or sabotage, no justification at all. Maxime just ruined a man's life and mutilated his body and mind for literally no reason. If you ask us, the trampling he got at the end of the movie was too light of a punishment. He has all of the worst characteristics of the villains before him and then some, making him an easy choice for the most evil character in the Despicable Me franchise.